what would you like to see in my upcoming videos?
Hey!
Over a decade.
Hey, that's a yeehaw moment right there.
Good morning, YouTube. This is PQ Speed Shop here. Hoping YouTube doesn't block out my music here in the background as I'm working. This is a working shop. Anyways, I wanted to up my game a little bit and pull out the GoPro and do a little bit more instructional video on these instead of just showing you the aftermath. But it'll be come and go. So let's do a catch up. This should be part 7, I believe. I think that's right, part 7. So I've gotten this all tightened up here. I've got the seam sealer on. Everything's welded up there. I've cut out the A-pillar. This is a scary part because I've never done anything like this before, and I took my measurements across, but I really don't know how it's going to fit. I don't have a windshield in order to continue to check that, to put it in afterwards. So I'm not quite sure if I'm going to weld this solid or just leave it sheet metal screwed. Part is over here. It's prepped and ready to go on back onto the car. The inside, I had to weld a plate on there because my welding is not that great and I burned some holes. So I welded a plate and then I went ahead and primed it and put some seam sealer over the edges just to make sure water doesn't leak in there. Now this panel here is not an AMD panel. This is a Goodmark panel. And the reason I went with the Goodmark panel is because it's an entire whole A-pillar. The AMD is only the outside. And if you saw pictures of this car earlier, then you know that the A-pillars on this car were completely rotted in this area here and all the way up to about here. And then you can see I've got to go to Tennessee for this part, but I've treated this section up here of the roof, and you can see it's pretty bad. When I peel this, because I have a new roof skin, but that's one of the last pieces that I'm going to attack. But once I do that, I've got to pull this off and treat all of this. And this is just some Pour 15 that I put on there because I can paint over top of it. I don't have a big, long experience with Pour 15. All the body work that I did was years ago, and they didn't have any such thing back then. So I'm giving it a try. We'll see how it works. It's got to be better than what the factory put on there. So you saw the rocker panel last time. I've got this inner door cowl piece. I guess that's what they're calling it. I got this on here. When I welded it on here, I got to use the new spot welder, which you can see it works great. I love the new spot welder. Okay, so this is welded in. I got to address my welds, and my apologies. This is a working shop, like I said. So I got the air compressor going. I got the music on the radio. So there's some background noise going on here. I got some hissing from a line behind me. But anyways, back here to the door panel, the door cowl. The door cowl piece, I used some spray can enamel. It's not color matching, it's just a red enamel. This is behind the quarter panel, and you won't see this once it's all covered up. I did weld on a new window slider for inside here. This was rotted also. The driver's side on this car was the worst. I started taking out the spot welds with the spot weld cutter on this part to get this piece out. If you hadn't seen the last time, I took out the front floor piece. Once I got this sheet metal screwed in back here, it gave it a little more rigidness. Plus I still have these pieces welded in. So once that is on there, I went ahead and said, okay, I got to go ahead and get this rest of this floor out, because I got the rocker panel on, which is basically part of the actual sub frame, is this rocker panel, because it makes one solid piece from the front to the rear. Then you have the cross member piece here. Now, I will address all this stuff, but I wanted to get this cut out, and the reason being is because I have those new frame rails, and they did finally come in, and I need to trace the floor so from underneath so that I can mark where the frame rails and the cross rail are on the floor, because this is eventually coming out. This front cowl section is coming out. Upper and lower cowl or firewall, that's all coming out. So we see what we got here. Now, I go back here, and I didn't get to show you this all the last time on the last video, but these frame rails are in. They're welded, and they're in. They're for good. There's some welds down here I need to address, but I was dreaming or thinking of having this on a rotisserie after I'm done with this car, get the outside bodywork done, and then get it on a rotisserie and flip it over and get the bottom and address some of the pieces I've missed. This trunk pan is in. I welded this in. I did all this before I put the pan in. So the pan is just sheet metal screwed in. This is your spare tire holder. Got that on, got that seam sealed. I had to drill my own holes for that because the pan didn't come with the holes. And some of these welds here on the tank strap part are beginning to start to spot rust. Now I've checked my gaps on this side and on this side, and my measurements from front to rear are correct, and from side to side are correct. Knowing that the frame rails are welded in and this back panel is welded in, I will go ahead and start welding this pan in. But I may pull it out first to address some of those welds underneath. Like I told Kuda Cave the other day, I'm not one that likes to weld upside down. He likes that, but I can't stand it. So I may address that. Now I've got this deck filler pan on here, and if you notice I had to cut the back off. I was going to try to keep the trunk lid on, but that side trunk hinge is shot. It's all rusted out. It won't hold anything anymore, and it's such a small little tab on there with this little groove, specialty groove on there. It's already flaking apart, so I went ahead and ordered new hinges for the back, and we're going to address those. Anyways, I ended up cutting the quarters off on both sides right there. I'm going to trust my measurements at this point, because I have a book that I drew pictures of, and I put all of the measurements on and everything. And I've actually got some solid pieces now, so I got something to line up to. And that's kind of important. I mean, once I put the quarters and the rear pan on, or the rear tail panel on, and the valance and stuff on, that will all get put on without being welded first. It'll just be put on to check the alignment and get it right. But the pans themselves are in the correct positions. But I'm ready to start welding some of this stuff. I treated the inside of the frame rails with that same enamel paint, and I got weld-on primer on the sides. And all I did for that was I did the weld-on primer first, then I taped off where it was actually going to weld, and then I sprayed inside the frame rails with the enamel paint. And the other thing I need to address once I get this rear pan in is these cross pieces that go in the back. I didn't know how else to address it, and I cut them off. It was probably going to be a pain in the butt to weld back. But I'm going to go ahead and do it that way, and then once I get this pan welded and the trunk pan welded, and these cross pans, that's going to give it a little more support for when I do the deck filler panel. See, I always have to think 2 steps ahead. Now, if there's one recommendation I'll give everybody who's doing this to their cars, is to save all your old parts. Whatever you cut off, you save. And the reason I'm saying that is because if there's something like this jack piece that's welded on there, you're going to need a reference for that afterward. Or if you start putting it together and maybe you haven't touched it in a few weeks, you need to go back and look at reference. Look at your old parts, the ones that came off. And, I've got a pile of sheet metal outside from this car. I mean, yes, it's out in the weather, but I can at least go out there and check on it if I need to double check where things go or how things work. Because I don't always remember that. I get busy with the moment. But isn't that a scary sight? A-pillar panels missing completely off the car. It's scary for me, you know, because there's nothing there. And I got the supports. And this is where I say you have to measure. Check your measurements first, once, twice, 3 times. But we've got new metal on this thing. So it's starting to become more solid of a vehicle. And hopefully we'll get to where we need to be. So I'm going to cut off here for this little introduction part. We'll touch back later when we get some work done. Alright, so we're getting ready to weld in this back under the seat floor pan. Using a MIG welder. A couple things I recommend. If you're like me and you spend a shit ton of money on tattoos, get yourself something to cover up your tattoo. Your tattoos will love you, and so will your tattoo artist. The other thing I recommend is a light. I can't see as it is anyways, and it might just be old age, but I definitely would get yourself a light. It just makes it so much easier. Now when I'm welding this pan, the bottom of the pan has already gotten the weld-through primer on it. So the two matting surfaces that touch get the weld-through primer on it. I'm going to start at the top. I'm going to work my way down. I'll do probably 3 on this side and then 3 on this side, and I'll work my way all the way down to the bottom. You want to make sure that your welds are nice and flush. So have your hammer, tap on your hammer, make sure everything's flush. And I'm going to turn this music down so YouTube doesn't block out my video. And we're going to get busy doing some welding. I ain't the greatest welder, but what I've done so far is I've grinded everything down, all the crappy welds down. Then I used the roll-lock disc and went over that each spot to try to just get the E-coating back a little bit more. And now I'm going to go over the entire panel with red Scotch-Brite pad. Once I scuff everything off, you want to get all the E-coat down to a dull finish, and once you get down to dull finish, then I'll go back and I will just throw some epoxy primer over all of the bare metal parts here, and that's where I'll stop with this. Done one quick wet coat. Now I'm going to do a wipe on, wipe off coat. The original one just kind of loosened everything up for me, and now the goal is to not just loosen it up, but to take it off. And don't do that what I just did, which is drop the rag on the dirty ass floor. Alright, so this next coat, I did one quick wet coat over everything. Now I'm going to do a wipe on, wipe off. One more time to get off any kind of dirt. The first stuff kind of loosened everything up. Now this is going to take everything off. And it's just as simple as that. Wipe on, wipe off. Wipe on, wipe off. Wipe on, wipe off. Wipe on, wipe off. Just like that. PQ here, PQ Speed Shop, Project Challenger, episode 7. What we did in episode 7 is we went ahead and attached the A-pillar. We got the rear under the seat floor pan welded in place. We grinded crappy ass welds, hit everything with the red scratchy pad, and primed all of the bare metal spots with epoxy primer. I'm thankful for everybody who's joined along. Please subscribe. I originally started these videos just as a personal thing and to share with family members on Facebook. Some people encouraged me that I should put them on YouTube so other people can ride along and share along in the experiences. I went ahead and broke out my GoPro camera this time, and so hopefully the video will get a little better. I know the first couple ones were kind of boring, but just try to keep in mind that those were Facebook Live posts, most of them. Some things here, I touch base on a few items that I use here, and as time goes on, I'll go ahead and show you how I prep a panel, like when we do the floor pan and when we do the front frame rail replacement. I'll go ahead and do that step by step so you all can come along. I know I've made some comments about the beard condom. This is a biker beard wrap, and it can be found at bbwwraps.com. For me, I bought it originally for the motorcycle to keep the hair from blowing into my face. But I found that it's really useful when I'm welding because I have to pick the shield up and down. I want to thank everybody who is following along with this. This is a passion of mine. This car has history to me, and I'm looking forward to the day when I finally get to drive it. If you have any suggestions for upcoming videos, please leave a comment or contact me at motoman172@hotmail.com. Thank you very much again for watching, and see you next time. Peace.